20 years. That's how long I gave to Michael. Birthdays, holidays, lazy Sunday mornings, inside jokes only we understood. And then one night, over takeout, he said it. "I need excitement," he told me, like I'd been holding him back. "I deserve a fresh start." Just like that, I wasn't his wife anymore. I was a chapter he wanted to skip. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, watching the man I trusted erase me. What hurt the most? It wasn't the betrayal. It was how calm he was. Like ending our life together was no more difficult than canceling a subscription. "You'll be okay," he said, touching my hand like he was offering comfort or closure. But how do you find comfort when your world stops making sense? When the walls of your own home feel like strangers pressing in? I didn't recognize my life anymore. He left with a suitcase and a smile. I stayed with the silence. Weeks passed, and the house started to feel more like a museum, memories in every corner, but no one left to share them with. And then came the final blow. He sold it, sold our home to buy a new one with her, Lena, 25, maybe 26, bright, bubbly, everything I'm not. Or so he thought. I didn't meet Lena. I didn't need to. The photos online told me everything. Her hand wrapped around his arm, her smile just a little too rehearsed, his face stretched into something he probably thought looked happy. He moved on like I was nothing more than a placeholder until she came along. And I became a footnote in a story I helped write. People around me offered sympathy, but their eyes said, maybe he just needed someone younger. I won't lie, those first mornings were brutal. I'd wake up reaching for someone who wasn't there, making 2 cups of coffee out of habit, only to pour one down the drain. The silence was heavier than any heartbreak, and it wasn't just about the man. It was about losing the life I had spent years shaping. The dinners I'd planned, the memories I thought meant something. All of it felt stolen, replaced, rewritten without my consent. But something shifted. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe it was the humiliation burning deep enough to spark something new. He thought I'd shrink, disappear, maybe even beg. But I started wondering, what if I didn't vanish like he expected? What if, instead of fading into the background, I did the unthinkable, not to chase him, but to face him, on my terms? The day the moving trucks came for the last of his things, I stood in the doorway with a cup of coffee and a stare that could cut steel. He didn't look back, not once. Just laughed at something Lena said and loaded his new life into the back of a rented van. And that should have been the end of it, right? That's what everyone expected, that I'd cry, maybe cut my hair, take a trip to find myself. But I didn't need to find anything. I knew exactly who I was. I wasn't broken. I was buried, under years of compromise, quiet sacrifices, and second thoughts I never voiced. But now there was space to breathe, to think, to be. So I sat at the kitchen table and stared out at the empty street, this strange stretch of asphalt that once meant safety and routine. And that's when I saw the sign go up. For rent, just across the road, right across the street from Michael's new house. I felt a flicker, not of revenge, not of spite, but something deeper, a sense of clarity. He thought I'd vanish quietly, fade into some lonely version of myself while he played house with someone new. But no. I was going to live right across from his new, fresh start, not to stir drama, just to remind him what confidence looks like after being discarded. I didn't plan it, not exactly. I was browsing listings, half distracted, still in pajamas with yesterday's coffee in the microwave, when I saw it. The photo stopped me cold. That red door, those hedges, that perfect little porch. Right across the street from Michael and Lena. The universe has a strange sense of humor. Most people would have scrolled past. I clicked Request a Viewing. The real estate agent was all smiles, talking about square footage and natural light. I barely heard her. My eyes were fixed on the window. From the living room, you could see their front yard perfectly. It wasn't about spying. It was about showing up, existing, living right there where I was never supposed to be again. And the best part? No one saw it coming. I signed the lease that afternoon. No hesitation. No second guessing. I boxed up my life, the parts worth keeping, and moved in 2 weeks later. I planted roses in the front yard, not out of spite, but because I'd always loved roses and never had the chance to grow them. And on that first morning, I stood on my new porch, waved politely as Lena came out with the recycling, and watched her freeze like she'd seen a ghost. She didn't wave back. Just stood there for a second too long, clutching that blue bin like it might shield her from something. I smiled, not with malice, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who's done hiding. Michael came out moments later. He didn't even glance in my direction, which was fine, because I wasn't there to provoke. I was there to exist, fully and unapologetically, in the very spot he hoped I'd never return to. Every gesture I made felt deliberate. I hung wind chimes on the porch, had groceries delivered, played Billie Holiday in the afternoons with the windows open. I even invited the mailman in for coffee once. Not for any reason, really, just to remind myself that this house, this life, was mine now. And every time Lena peeked from behind her curtains, I let her. Let her wonder what I was doing. Let her feel what I had felt, displaced, uncertain, out of control. People say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I didn't see it that way. This wasn't revenge. This was resurrection. They took so much from me without asking. My husband, my home, my sense of certainty. But now, piece by piece, I was reclaiming it, not with shouting matches or bitter posts online, just with presence, with rootedness, with roses in bloom and a door that stayed wide open. I started taking morning walks, same route every day, same time. Not for show, just for me. But I won't lie, the way Michael stiffened when he saw me walking past with a coffee and a soft smile, that was a bonus. He never waved, he barely even looked. But I could feel it. That tension in his jaw, the awkward shift in his posture. Like guilt had a weight he wasn't used to carrying in public. Lena, on the other hand, began retreating. Fewer outings, shorter walks, quick glances over her shoulder. Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it was everything I represented. The woman before her. The one who was supposed to vanish but didn't. I could tell it unsettled her, the way I walked with peace, with purpose. Like I didn't need to prove anything. Like I had already won something quietly they hadn't even realized was up for grabs. I kept my distance, never spoke to them, never even crossed their side of the street. But I didn't have to. My presence was loud in its own way. A woman who'd been discarded and replaced, yet somehow glowed brighter than ever. I wasn't there to rub it in. I was simply there, blooming right where they hoped I'd never grow again. Funny how quickly a life can take root once you stop waiting for permission. I started waking up earlier just to feel the morning air. Jogging, something I hadn't done in years. It felt like shaking off dust I didn't know had settled. I joined a local book club, started hosting wine nights with women who laughed loudly and asked nothing of me but presence. People began to know my name again, not as someone's wife, but simply as Claire. My online shop, a side project I once built in quiet corners of the house, suddenly took off. Orders came in fast. Candles, soaps, custom kits. I turned the spare bedroom into a workspace. It smelled like lavender and eucalyptus most days. I loved it. I loved me. And the more I thrived, the more Michael seemed to shrink. I'd catch him peeking through the blinds as guests pulled into my driveway, music trailing behind them. I never looked over for long, just enough to let him know I'd noticed. It was subtle, always subtle. I didn't need to say a word. The neighborhood started shifting too. People gravitated toward my porch, my garden, my energy. Lena started waving again, nervous little gestures like she was hoping I'd return them. I didn't. Not out of cruelty, just clarity. Some things don't need revisiting. What they didn't understand, what maybe they still don't, is that I didn't come back for them. I came back for me. To rebuild on ground I once walked in shame. To stand taller in the same place I once felt so small. I didn't need Michael's attention. But the fact that he couldn't look away, that was its own poetry. He tried to erase me, and now I lived in 4K resolution right outside his window. There was a dinner party once, small, just 6 of us. Friends from town, a couple from the next block. We laughed deep into the night, the kind of laughter that wraps around your ribs and shakes loose the old grief. I saw Michael watching from across the street. He looked tired, like someone who didn't sleep well, like someone who knew they'd traded something rare for something replaceable. I kept things light, always. I never brought up the past. Never corrected the timeline when new neighbors assumed I was just Claire from Rosewood Lane. I let them believe what they wanted, but every now and then someone would ask how I ended up here, alone, yet somehow glowing. And I'd just smile and say, sometimes life reroutes you to exactly where you were meant to bloom. There was a strange kind of power in saying nothing, in letting my presence speak louder than any confrontation ever could. I wasn't dressing up for anyone, but I noticed the way Lena stared at my outfits, polished, effortless, unapologetic. She started wearing more makeup. I could tell she was trying, reaching, maybe even competing with a woman she thought had been left behind, but I wasn't in that race anymore. I had no interest in proving I was better. I just was. Michael. He looked older, not in the natural way, but like someone carrying the weight of too many bad choices. His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. His voice, when I caught it through open windows, sounded thinner, like a man who'd lost something but couldn't name it. I never gloated. I didn't need to. Every time I walked outside, watering my garden or chatting with a neighbor, the truth settled over them like fog. I didn't knock on their door. I didn't need to. I became the neighbor they couldn't ignore, the reminder neither of them asked for, but both felt. And the funny thing is, I wasn't trying to haunt them. I was just living my life, boldly, openly, right across the street. And with every passing day, I could feel it, their perfect little world beginning to crack. It started in small ways, the little things people usually don't notice unless they're paying attention. The trash bin left out too long, the blinds drawn more often, fewer cars in their driveway. I wasn't trying to keep tabs, but when your front porch faces their front door, you see things, you feel the shift. The tension hanging in the air like humidity before a storm. Something in their house wasn't right. I overheard them one afternoon, voices sharp, too loud to ignore. I was trimming my roses when Lena snapped, "If she's not bothering you, why do you flinch every time you see her?" Then silence. A long, aching silence. I didn't hear his reply. Maybe there wasn't one. But I paused with the shears in my hand, the petals soft and trembling like my chest used to when he spoke to me that way. Only this time, I wasn't the one unraveling. The neighbors noticed, too. One of them, sweet Marjorie from 3 doors down, leaned in during book club and said, "They don't look happy, you know, not like you." I thanked her with a smile and poured more tea, pretending her words didn't echo in my chest. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because once upon a time I believed their happiness had to come at the expense of mine. Nights became the loudest part of the day. That's when their walls stopped pretending. I'd be reading or packaging orders when the shouting started, muffled at first, then sharp and clear through the open windows. One night I caught it all. Lena's voice, broken and breathless. "She's always there, Michael. She's always watching." The desperation in her tone wasn't about me. It was about the guilt she couldn't scrub off his skin. He didn't yell back. Not once. Just silence. The kind that speaks more than words ever could. I imagined him standing there, jaw tight, eyes glazed, wondering how things had slipped through his fingers so fast. He used to fill rooms with laughter. Now he couldn't even fill the silence. And me? I sat on my porch swing with a cup of chamomile, listening to the cracks echo through their designer walls. I didn't feel victorious. I felt still, grounded, like someone who had finally stopped chasing closure and just let it come. What I heard wasn't karma. It was consequence. The slow, heavy cost of lies wrapped in pretty packaging. They wanted a fresh start, a clean slate. But when you build a new life on someone else's pain, the foundation never settles right. There was a moment, just one, when I caught Michael standing at the edge of his driveway. He didn't notice me at first. He was staring at my house, not angrily, not even with regret really, just hollow, like he was remembering something he couldn't reach anymore. I didn't move. I just stood inside by the window, hands warm from the mug in my grip, watching a man slowly recognize the shape of his own consequences. Lena didn't come out that morning. Her car was gone before sunrise, and when it returned that evening, she stayed in the passenger seat while Michael unloaded the groceries alone. There was no hand-holding, no kiss, just silence. Again. It was like watching a film in reverse, all the sparkle and performance peeling away, frame by frame, until nothing was left but two strangers in a house built on fantasy. I never said a word to them, never crossed that street. But I didn't have to. Every petal in my garden, every laugh from my porch, every quiet sunrise I welcomed with joy, it all whispered the same truth. I wasn't their ghost. I was their reflection. And eventually, even the cleanest windows crack under the weight of what they're trying to hide. It happened on a Tuesday. No warning, no phone call, just a knock at the door. I opened it to find Michael standing there, not like the man who left me, but like someone trying to remember how to ask for help. His eyes searched mine, desperate for something familiar. "I miss the way things were," he said, like that sentence could rewind 2 decades and erase the way he shattered them. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. The lines on his face were deeper, the confidence, gone. What stood in front of me wasn't the man I loved. It was the man who taught me how to survive without him. I didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Just looked him in the eye and said, "I don't." No rage, no tears, just peace. A kind of peace he didn't know how to hold anymore. He stood there, stunned, like he expected me to fall apart all over again. Maybe he thought I'd let him in, or cry, or cling to some hope he could be the man I remembered. But that version of him didn't exist anymore. And honestly, neither did that version of me. So I closed the door, slowly, gently, and let him stand there on the porch of the life he'd thrown away. I walked back to the kitchen, poured my coffee, and stepped out onto the porch. The sky was soft with morning light, and my roses were just beginning to open. Across the street, Lena stood frozen by their window, watching me. Her expression said everything: confusion, disbelief, maybe even fear, not of me, but of what she saw in me, a woman unshaken, a woman rebuilt. I sat in my usual spot, legs tucked beneath me, coffee warm in my hands, and let the silence speak. Let it stretch across the street like a mirror, forcing them to see what they tried to bury. For so long, I thought I had to get smaller to survive, quieter, nicer, easier to swallow. But now, I filled every inch of my space. I didn't haunt them, I illuminated them. And just when I thought the chapter was over, life tossed me one more twist, a call from a publisher. Someone had stumbled across my blog, my quiet journal entries about grief, rebirth, and being left behind. They wanted to turn it into a book. The title came to me instantly, like it had been waiting this whole time, The Art of Not Disappearing. I smiled as I said it aloud. It tasted like closure. The day the contract arrived, I signed it with a steady hand and a full heart. I wasn't just writing a book. I was carving my story into stone, not for revenge, not even for recognition, but for every woman who's ever been told to stay quiet, move on, or disappear. This wasn't about him anymore. It never really was. It was about claiming my own ending, one I wrote myself. Word spread quickly, as it always does in small towns. People started stopping me at the cafe, the market, even the post office. "Is it true?" they'd ask, eyes wide, and I'd nod. "It's all in the book." I saw Lena once more, walking alone, her eyes darting away the second they met mine. And Michael? He never knocked again. But I'd catch him glancing, older, slower, shadowed by the life he chose. He left me for someone younger. But I made sure he aged quickly in my shadow. Not out of vengeance, but out of evolution. I didn't just survive the storm, I redesigned the skyline. And every time I step onto that porch, roses blooming, coffee in hand, I know exactly who I am. Not the woman he left, the woman who never disappeared.